Hi guys, back finally after at least 2 months, possibly even November, probably three months now. Long overdue. A lot has happened in those 3 months. Got run pretty ragged at work over Christmas, and but things are looking up now. We were short staffed, but it's easy to kind of brush everything else to the side. But I'm back. I have been watching videos again. A huge apology as well to Rob from Boston. Thank you so much for the email that you sent, and I'm so sorry I never replied, but to be honest, I did very little socialising over Christmas, and in the run up to Christmas it was just basically work, and then it was much the same after Christmas. It's kind of died down now, but yeah, I'm so sorry. I will send you a message back in due course. But anyway, first off, thank you. I normally, if somebody sends me some VCLT, I normally like to do a live opening, but like I said, this year with Christmas, it was I just couldn't resist, and I just had to open it. So I got a wonderful package from Roger Coleman, which kind of blew me away, because there were some things in it that I've always wanted. The main one being this, which is the Grateful Dead's one from the vault. This is like a 3-disc set, and I suppose you could argue that as it's the first thing from the vault, it's probably going to be the best one. But this is brilliant. Such a kind of generous gift. And this first side here is just brilliant. Probably one of the best sides of the Grateful Dead that I've heard. But I was blown away with this. I've listened to it a few times now, and yeah, I'm stoked to have this in my collection. So thank you, Roger. Yeah, I'm over the moon with that. He also sent me this 8-track tape of Grateful Dead's Live Dead, because he kind of knew that I wanted an 8-track player, so he sent me this. And actually, subsequently, since you've sent this, I have acquired an 8-track player. My friend actually had one in his shed, so I haven't brought it home and tested it and tried it out to see if it's working, because it's not in a state, but it's been in his shed for a lot of years, so it needs a good clean, and I just haven't got round to that yet. I've got umpteen other projects on the go, but this is brilliant. My first ever 8-track tape. Delighted with that. He also sent me a CD, which I haven't had the chance to listen to, because I do have a CD player at home, but it's not, I don't have it wired in, basically. I don't have speakers. So all my listening at the moment is done on headphones. But I do have your CD at work, and I will listen to it in the van tomorrow. I keep forgetting to take it out with me, because I always like to take CDs in the van when I'm out on delivery. So thank you so much. I hope you liked the items that I sent you. I hope you do, anyway. And if you don't, well, you can always forward them to someone else. Which reminds me, actually, Andreas, if you're watching this, Andreas the Grecian Thunder, I also sent you, the same day I sent Roger his VCLT, I sent you some as well. Yet it doesnit seem to have arrived yet. Or you certainly haven't mentioned it. And Roger got his a week ago. So if it hasn't arrived, then I'm sorry. I really don't know what's happened to it. Hopefully it'll turn up soon. But if it has arrived, please let me know. Just to kind of put my mind at rest. So anyway, on to other finds that I've picked up. This was a great find. This is Greatest Show on Earth, with their album Horizons. It's in this really cool kind of gatefold sleeve with the eyes. These guys were on the Harvest label, so the same as, you know, Pink Floyd, people like that. Light shining on that too much. There we go. But you can see it doesn't have the EMI logo, so you can tell it's an early pressing. Really great band, and unlike most of the things that are on Horizon, I think the Greatest Show on Earth are actually a band formed by the record label to try and compete with, well, not necessarily compete with, but to be in the same kind of genre as bands like Chicago, that kind of progressive horn-based rock. But that's a really, really good album. I picked up this album, Gillian McPherson, called Poets and Painters and Performers of Blues. I picked this up really cheap in the record store here. I think it was like £7 maybe. But this is pretty rare. Kind of singer-songwriter. There's some great stuff on here. It's a bit of a mixed bag. But yeah, if you like kind of female folky stuff, it's not quite out there enough to be acid folk, but it's definitely well worth a listen. So yeah, Gillian McPherson. This was a good find. Marc Ellington. He's a Scottish kind of folky as well. And this is on the B&C label, which was the kind of sister label to the famous Charisma label. You can see here, if you look, the CAS 1033. Basically, B&C Records and Charisma used the same catalogue numbers. So you might have CAS 1033, and this was on B&C, like CAS 1034 might have been on the Charisma label. And then CAS 1035 might have been on B&C again. It might have been another Charisma release. But basically they were run concurrent. So this is it's not the best album. It's in really cool packaging. It's one of these kind of flappy open jobs, textured sleeve. But his backing on this is basically the whole, or a lot of Fairport conventions. So you've got Richard Thompson and Dave Pegg and Dave Mattox. Who else is on here? Ian Matthews. Richard Thompson. I said Richard Thompson. Who else was on here? Tony Cox. Sandy Denny. But also there's a couple of guys out of the Flying Burrito Brothers. Who are they again? Mine's gone blank. Oh, Sneaky Pete and is it Jerry Conway? Yeah, but anyway. Unfortunately, I think Marc Ellington is probably the weak spot on this album. But it was a cool. I mean, I got this really cheap, really cheap. So yeah, I was stoked to find this. Another interesting one, and I collect the Charisma label, so it slots in nicely with my Charisma collection. This was a great find. Small Faces, their debut album. It's not in the greatest of condition, but it plays much better than it looks. This doesn't really need any introduction. It's just one of those cornerstones of British music, you know, along with probably the Kinks' debut. Rolling Stones. I don't know who you'd pick for the last one. Maybe Led Zeppelin's first one. Probably the Beatles, maybe. But yeah, just fantastic album. Yeah, Stevie Marriott's voice is just something else. Yeah, so I'm delighted to have a first pressing of that. Another thing I picked up pretty cheap is this Dave Clark 5 in session. This was actually, although it's made in the UK, it was actually made for the export market. It's on EMI's Regal label. Dave Clark 5 were huge. And I mean, they sold millions and millions of albums. I think they're only probably outsold at, you know, at the time by the Beatles, certainly in the US, with the kind of British invasion bands that hit the US. I think it was probably only the Beatles that outsold the Dave Clark 5. But Dave Clark owned the rights to all the music and probably held out for the best deal that he could to release their songs latterly, or to reissue their stuff, which ultimately meant that none of it got reissued. So none of the Dave Clark 5 stuff was ever available for like 25 years, probably, from when they broke up in the early 70s, I think it was, until probably the mid-90s before their first official releases got redone. And I think because of that, they've kind of been forgotten about. But if you like the sound of the early Beatles, you'll probably like the Dave Clark 5. But I think the problem people have with the Dave Clark 5 is they never progressed. They kind of stuck to that sound, whereas the Beatles moved on. The Dave Clark 5 didn't. But this is pretty good stuff. And finally, I picked up my first Scott Walker album. I don't need to say anything more about that. I've wanted to get Scott 1, 2, 3 and 4 for a long time. I've had a compilation, but yeah, that's it. Short and sweet. I want to keep this under 15 minutes, so we're getting there now. So hi to everyone. Yeah, take care.